If money were enough to create lasting wealth, almost every lottery winner would stay rich, but most of them don't. The same happens with athletes, celebrities, and entrepreneurs who accumulate millions and then watch it all disappear. Meanwhile, some families manage to stay wealthy for generations. What do they know that everyone else doesn't? Today we are going to explore the 7 old money rules that separate lasting wealth from temporary wealth. And the last one might be the most powerful of all. And the truth is, this question has a very clear answer. Families that stay wealthy for generations aren't luckier than everyone else. They aren't born smarter. They don't necessarily work harder. They simply follow different rules. Rules that were never taught in school, that rarely show up in personal finance books, and that the people who know them rarely share. Today you are going to learn the 7 most important ones. And what makes this set of rules so fascinating is that they are not independent. They connect. One leads to the next. One supports the next. And together, they build something most people never achieve: wealth that lasts. Let's start with the first one, and perhaps the most counterintuitive of all. Most people wake up every day thinking about the same thing. How can I earn more? How can I grow faster? How can I get there before everyone else? And there's nothing wrong with ambition, but old money discovered something that most people never stop to think about. Growing without protecting is like filling a bucket with a hole in it. You pour, you pour, you pour, and at the end of the day, the bucket is still empty. The first old money rule isn't about earning more. It's about not losing what you already have. Think about it this way. If you have $100,000 invested and you lose 50%, you need a 100% return just to get back to where you started. Not 50%, 100%. That's the kind of math that old money understands from an early age, and that most people only learn after losing something important. That's why while most people ask, "How can I double my money?" old money asks something completely different. How can I make sure I never lose what I've already built? Protect before you grow. In practice, this means diversifying before taking risks, having solid reserves before investing aggressively, building walls before building towers. And here's what's most fascinating about all of this. Families that follow this rule rarely get rich overnight, but they also rarely go broke. And in the long run, not losing is far more powerful than winning. But protect what exactly? That's where the second rule changes everything. Because old money doesn't protect the same things that most people accumulate. There's a scene that repeats itself everywhere. Someone gets a raise, earns a bonus, closes a bigger deal than they expected. And the first thing they do? Buy a better car, move to a bigger apartment, upgrade the wardrobe. It's human. It's understandable. It's exactly what the industry wants you to do. But it's also exactly the opposite of what old money does. Because old money learned the difference between 2 questions that sound the same, but aren't. What is this going to do for me right now? And what is this going to do for my net worth 10 years from now? New money buys things that impress, cars that lose value, clothes that go out of style, symbols that need to be updated every season. Old money buys things that work, businesses that generate income, properties that appreciate, stakes that pay dividends, land that will exist forever. The difference isn't just philosophical, it's mathematical. An $80,000 car is worth $40,000 in 5 years. An $80,000 property could be worth $130,000 in the same period, and still have generated income every single month. One buys status, the other buys freedom. And that's why old money rarely looks wealthy in the way most people imagine. Because their money isn't in the garage. It isn't in the wardrobe. It isn't in the appearance. It's working, quietly, far from anyone's eyes. Cash flow before appearance. That's the rule. And when you start seeing the world through that lens, every purchase decision starts to feel completely different. But buying the right assets is only half of the equation, because old money doesn't just think about what it buys, it thinks about when and for whom. And that's exactly what the third rule is going to show you. Here's a question that most people never ask, not because it's difficult, but because nobody ever taught them to ask it. Where will your family be 50 years from now? Not you, your family, your children, your children's children, the name you're going to leave behind. Most people plan their lives in short cycles. Where will I be 12 months from now? What am I going to do with this year's bonus? How am I going to pay for next summer's vacation? And there's nothing wrong with short-term planning, but old money plays a completely different game. While most people think in years, old money thinks in decades. While most people plan for themselves, old money plans for people who haven't even been born yet. And that changes absolutely everything. It changes where they invest, what they buy, the schools they choose, the relationships they build, and even the way they make decisions every single day. Because when you're thinking 50 years ahead, a temporary loss isn't a catastrophe. It's just a moment in a much bigger story. When you're thinking 50 years ahead, an investment that takes 10 years to mature doesn't seem slow. It seems smart. There's a phrase that captures this mindset better than any other. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. Old money plants trees. Most people buy flowers, beautiful, colorful, that last about a week. And perhaps that's exactly why some families stay wealthy 100 years later, while others watch fortunes disappear in a single generation. But thinking in generations without preparing the next generation is like building a bridge without the other side. And that's exactly what the fourth rule is going to show you. There's a silent mistake that many wealthy families make. They transfer the fortune, but they forget to transfer the knowledge. And when that happens, the story almost always ends the same way. The first generation builds, the second maintains, the third spends. You've probably heard some version of this story before. The entrepreneur's grandson who burned through everything in 10 years. The heir who never learned the value of what they received. The family that had everything and then suddenly had nothing. Old money understood something fundamental about this. A fortune without financial education isn't a gift. It's a burden. It's placing a powerful tool in someone's hands that they don't know how to use. That's why old money doesn't wait for children to grow up before talking about money. From an early age, their children learn that money isn't just something to spend. It's a responsibility. They learn what net worth is, how it grows, how it can disappear, and what it means to preserve something that took generations to build. They learn about investments before they learn how to drive. They learn about legacy before they learn about inheritance. And perhaps most importantly of all, they learn that the family's money doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the next generation too. That simple shift in perspective completely transforms the way a young heir makes decisions. Because when you feel the weight of responsibility, you stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a guardian. Transfer knowledge before transferring money. That's the rule. And it explains why some families manage to keep fortunes alive for over 100 years, while others watch everything disappear in a single, unprepared generation. But even with all that knowledge, there is a silent trap that destroys fortunes without anyone noticing. And that's exactly what the fifth rule is going to talk about. This is perhaps the quietest rule of all, and also the most dangerous, because it doesn't arrive suddenly. It doesn't show up as a crisis. There's no clear moment where you realize something went wrong. It arrives slowly, comfortably, disguised as progress. There's a name for this in the American financial world: lifestyle inflation. And it works like this. You earn more, so you spend more. You get promoted, so you move to a better apartment. You close a bigger deal, so you buy a better car. And each one of those moves seems completely reasonable at the time. After all, you worked for it, you deserve it. But what happens in practice is that income goes up, lifestyle goes up with it, and the difference between what you earn and what you actually accumulate stays exactly zero. Old money understood this trap a long time ago and created a simple rule to avoid it. When income goes up, lifestyle goes up less. The difference becomes net worth, always. Not sometimes. Not when there's money left over, always. And here's what's fascinating. Some of the wealthiest families in existence live in homes they bought 30 years ago, drive cars that any middle-class person could own, eat at simple restaurants, wear clothes with no logo, not because they can't afford more, but because they understood that every dollar not spent today is a dollar that will work for the family tomorrow. Invisible wealth. That's what old money calls it. And perhaps that's exactly why you can never identify these families just by looking at them. Their wealth isn't on the surface. It's growing quietly, far from anyone's eyes. But avoiding excessive consumption is only part of the equation, because old money also understood that there is one asset that most people never think to protect, and that asset can open doors that no amount of money in the world can buy. Here's something that most people never consider when they think about building wealth. Reputation is an asset. Not metaphorically, not as a beautiful philosophical concept, literally, measurably, with direct impact on net worth. Old money understood this a long time ago and treats the family name with the same care it gives to any investment. Because in the world where old money operates, your reputation arrives before you do, before the handshake, before the meeting, before the proposal. People already know who you are, what your family stands for, whether you are someone who can be trusted. And that opens doors that no amount of money in the world can open on its own. Think about it this way. Two business people knock on the same door, looking for the same investment. One has more money. The other has a name that carries decades of integrity, relationships, and built trust. Who do you think gets the investment? Most of the time, it's not the one with more money. It's the one with more trust. That's why old money is extremely careful about three things: who it associates with, what it says in public, and how it behaves when nobody is watching. Because reputation isn't built in a day, but it can be destroyed in a moment. And a destroyed reputation can cost far more than any financial loss. Relationships generate opportunities. Trust generates opportunities. Integrity generates opportunities. The family name is an asset. And like any asset, it needs to be protected, cultivated, and passed on in better condition than it was received. But none of these values mean anything if they depend on a single person to function. And that's why the seventh rule may be the most important of all. Here's a truth that most people don't want to hear. Discipline fails, not because people are weak, but because we are human. Motivation comes and goes. Willpower has a limit. And even the most determined people in the world have days where they simply can't make the right decision. Think about your own life. How many times did you plan to invest this month and forgot? How many times did you say, "I'll save whatever is left over," and at the end of the month, nothing was left? How many times did an emotion, stress, a celebration, an impulse change a financial decision you had already planned? This happens to everyone, and old money knows this. That's why it doesn't trust motivation. It trusts systems. And there is an enormous difference between the two. Motivation depends on how you are feeling. A system works regardless of how you are feeling. In practice, this means the following. Instead of remembering to invest every month, old money creates automatic transfers that happen on payday, before the money can be spent. Instead of trusting that each heir will make good decisions, it creates trusts, legal structures that define exactly how the assets can be used, invested, and transferred to the next generation. Instead of relying on the goodwill of each family member, it writes clear family rules, real documents that define the values, the responsibilities, and the limits for those who inherit the fortune. The money stops depending on one person and starts being protected by a structure. And structures survive crises, survive conflicts, survive bad decisions made in moments of weakness, and survive even the death of the person who created them. That's why some families stay wealthy 100 years after the founder is no longer here. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's a system that was built to outlast any single person. 7 rules. Protect before you grow. Buy assets, not status. Think in generations. Teach wealth early. Avoid lifestyle inflation. Protect your reputation. And build systems. On their own, each one of these rules is already powerful. Together, they build something that most people will never have: wealth that lasts. And the most fascinating part of all this is that none of these rules require you to be born wealthy. They only require you to start thinking differently today. Now tell me something in the comments. Which of these 7 rules are you not applying in your life yet, but are going to start applying this week? If this video resonated with you, send it to your partner right now, because prosperity built as a couple is far more powerful than anything either of you could build alone. And if you want to take the first step today, we created something special for couples who are ready to start building this together. The link is in the description. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Every week there's a new video on money, family, mindset, and purpose. See you next time.